Howdy everybody in YouTube land. Before I start working on board number 2, I wanted to check the HAL, or these custom logic chips, a little bit more closely. Yesterday, what I did was this chip here was originally in that slot. So what I did was took the chip out of this board and put it into this slot, assuming this was the same, and it worked fine. This board actually works and everything's good. So what I ended up doing was I found a document online that shows the 3 different board revisions and where these chips go. Okay, and I looked at this one and these were all correct. Everything was good here except for this one, which I moved over here, but if I would move it back over here, this would be correct. So I'm going to set that one aside. Okay, well, come to find out, I looked at this part number on that spec sheet, and what I found was it originally goes here instead of here. So I'm thinking, really? Well, if I remove this chip to back to this board, get out of my way, and put this back, obviously it's not going to work. But if I put it down here and take this chip out, leaving this one intact, it would work. Okay, so then I come over to this board, which is my board number 2 that I got to fix, and guess what? These are also wrong. Okay, this chip goes over here. Okay, which if I would take this chip out, and this chip actually goes right here. So if I remove this chip with this one here, the board would work just fine. I haven't tested it, I'm just saying this would be the correct configuration. And I could take this chip and move it over here, because this chip belongs over here. So basically, in a nutshell, these 2 chips are reversed between the boards. So I remember the owner saying that before he started recapping, they did work. But after he recapped, they didn't. Well, that must mean that these chips configurations would have had to have been correct in order to get video. Okay? Otherwise, it's not going to work. So that means he switched them, didn't realize that he did. But the reason why I don't think he switched them is because when I was reading his posts, he said something about this chip looking like it was bigger than the rest of them. And he mentioned this chip being on UE6, which is this top chip. So it was wrong from the get-go. Which means the original owner, or wherever he got these boards from, he probably got these boards together. And either in one lot, or he bought them from the same guy, or however, I don't know, that's none of my business, but that means they never worked from the get-go. Okay, so that explains to me that when he said they worked, he probably got that information secondhand from the original owner, which the original owner had lied. They would have never worked, because these chips are reversed. So upon closer inspection, these chips are actually backwards. So basically, what I want to do, I can probably remove this chip and put it back onto the 3rd board. Okay, as this chip was originally here. So all I would have to do is take this chip off of this one and put it onto this one right here. Okay, and take this chip and move it over here, and it would work just fine, because that's the original configuration. Because, and the reason that further proves my point is, this is the first revision's chipset. Well, this matches this group, but this doesn't. So this chip actually originally went here. That's exactly where that one goes. And this one goes over to this one, because that chip matches this lot. Okay, but so does this chip, because these 2 boards are the same lot. So I figured I would throw that tidbit of information in there before I start working on this board. I could probably put the correct chip in here and this thing would probably work fine. But because there's a via drilled out here and a via drilled out here and the bare wires and all that stuff, I'm going to fix all that first before I even attempt it. But after I fix that, I'm going to reverse these 2. I'm taking this one back out of here putting it back into the other board, because the other board would not post at all either, and these configurations is correct. So it being on its original capacitors, there's definitely something wrong with that board for sure. But that board didn't come from the same lot as these. That was another one that comes from somewhere else apparently. But so I want to switch these around and start my work on board number 2 and see if we can't get it up and running. Not to mention, this board here has a socketed processor and this one does not. This one's the third board revision with the white processor direct slot. This is also missing the ROM, so I'm going to have to pull one off the other board and set it up. And recap this one, and hopefully this one actually works and there's no extreme damage to one of the chips. But we'll go ahead and take care of this one and get that one ready. I finally got it all corrected. I used the original caps that he put in here. What I did was, if you look real carefully, I'll turn the light on. If you look real carefully, you can see where the drilled out via was. I made a jumper wire which reconnected these two these two serial communications controller chips back over to the controller itself. That's where that via went. And I came up through, went from one side of the board and up through the other via to this chip. And if you look on the other side of the board, you see the little jumper wire that goes between both vias. And I also repaired that via and reconnected all that. So everything's good. And what I did was I switched the two chips around and booted up the working board to make sure the chips from here were good, and they were. Everything's fine. So I went ahead and tried to start this board up. It powers on, chimes, no video. Exactly what he said it was doing. So, I haven't figured out why yet, but, well, I think I did, but basically it chimes. If I hit the reset button, it'll keep chiming, and if I hit reset and hit the interrupt button, it'll give me the chimes of death. So that pretty much tells me the CPU, the glue logic, the RAM, controller, ROM, and all of this stuff has to be good in order for that to happen, aside from the peripherals, which I'm not to that point yet. Everything, the entire logic circuit has to be good. It's starting up ROMs, and it's not giving me a chimes of death unless I tell it to, so that tells me all initial hardware tests are okay. So it has to be related to the video controller. So I checked all the PALs again, and what I did was I took all the PALs off and moved it to the other board, and the other board still worked. And I put the other board's PALs back into here, and this one still has no video. So then I changed out the declaration ROM, the video, it's called a DECL ROM, but the video declaration ROM from the other board into this one. Nothing, but I took the one from this one to the other one, and the other one still worked. So I know the most expensive part, or the hard to obtain part of the circuit, is good. Except there's a PAL right here, which is the clock management. It generates the horizontal vertical sync pulses, and also that divides the 32 megahertz down to 16. But I know this has to be good, because if this was bad, the CPU wouldn't run. So it leaves the only one thing's left, and that's these chips here. So I kept screwing around with it, but I happened to notice something. You know, I tried continuity testing to make sure corrosion didn't eat things away, that kind of stuff, but I just happened to notice something. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see it, but that chip there appears to have a little problem with it. It took me a while to figure that out, but it's completely bridged. There's solder up underneath there. I don't know how that happened, but maybe a sloppy soldering iron or what, you know, from the previous owner, or maybe the owner before him. So we're going to go ahead and clean that up and see if we can get the video to return. If not, we're going to have to start going one by one with a scope and figure out which chip is fried. But I kind of feeling that has something to do with it, because that's actually this logic circuit right here. which is part of the video control, which I can roll the PAL out. And yeah, so we got to fix that. Went ahead and grabbed out the solder wick and cleaned that up the best I could. Definitely a lot better than what it was, that's for sure. It's no longer shorted. I went ahead and checked it with the meter. Another thing I noticed too with the PALs was that guy was getting red hot after a little bit. So see, that's pin 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's pin 14. So 14 was shorted to 13 and 12. 14 is VCC on a logic IC. So 14 was shorted to 12. That's the main clock. That's a clear line, which is hooked to the output of that. That would explain why that was getting hot. It's hooked to the output. What the hell? Well, that's fixed. So let's go ahead and set the camera down and plug. Hold on. Flip the camera around. Let's plug it in. Okay. Get up out of my chair. Turn the power on. See what happens. Well, would you look at that? It's amazing, ain't it? See if we get our blinking disc icon of doom. Uh-oh. It's taking a while. Ah, there it is. Well, that's another successful repair of the second board. There's only one more to go, and that's that one, which I'm not going to be too hopeful for because that capacitor is broken out, and who knows how many ground connections, because that's ground, and it probably broke several grounds in here, because there's probably an inner ground plane. I doubt it, but there might be. With that being broke, could have broke a ground trace going to half of these circuits. Because this one will start up, will turn on, no chime, no nothing. So, that's for another video. But this one is now successfully repaired. Thanks for watching.